You look absolutely stunning.
I love you so much.
Not when more than 300 guests stood to applaud as Ethan Carter and Amara Johnson walked hand in hand toward the center of the room. It looked like the perfect wedding, the kind of wedding people saved photographs of for years. The kind families bragged about long after the last guest had gone home. But before the wedding cake would ever be cut, before the first dance had truly begun, and before the champagne glasses had even been raised for the final toast, everything would collapse in front of everyone watching. And when the groom finally picked up the microphone, the truth he revealed wouldn't just end a marriage. It would destroy an entire family's carefully protected reputation. Stay with us because every smile in this room is hiding something. And the biggest secret belongs to the man everyone believes is about to lose everything. The ballroom buzzed with laughter as servers moved gracefully between tables carrying silver trays filled with sparkling drinks. Guests admired the towering wedding cake decorated with handcrafted sugar flowers that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Expensive cameras flashed from every direction while relatives embraced one another. Convinced they had just witnessed a fairy tale ceremony, Amara looked stunning. Her elegant gown shimmered beneath the lights, and every guest who passed complimented how radiant she appeared. She smiled graciously, thanked everyone, and posed for photographs with effortless confidence. Beside her, Ethan smiled too. At least, that's what everyone believed. Because behind his calm expression was a man quietly watching every movement around him. Every whispered conversation, every nervous glance, every forced smile. Months earlier, Ethan had imagined this day very differently. He had met Amara 2 years before at a charity fundraising gala where she seemed unlike anyone he had ever known. Intelligent, compassionate, confident without arrogance. She spoke passionately about helping disadvantaged children and volunteered at community shelters every weekend. Or at least that's what she had told him. She knew exactly what to say, exactly how to appear, exactly how to become the woman every successful man dreamed of marrying. Their relationship moved quickly. Friends called them the perfect couple. Social media overflowed with carefully edited photographs of romantic vacations, candlelit dinners, surprise gifts, and smiling family gatherings. People envied what they believed was genuine love. Only Ethan knew something had begun changing after the engagement. Little inconsistencies, small stories that didn't quite match, phone calls that ended the moment he entered the room, business meetings that seemed to happen at strange hours, receipts that couldn't be explained. At first, he blamed himself. Wedding planning was stressful. Everyone said couples argued before marriage. He convinced himself he was simply overthinking everything. Until one rainy Thursday evening, he had forgotten an important document at home and returned unexpectedly from work. The house was silent. Amara wasn't there, her car was missing. That wasn't unusual, but her tablet remained on the kitchen counter, its screen lit up with a message. Normally, Ethan never invaded her privacy, but the notification appeared before the screen locked. "We'll finish everything after the wedding." His stomach tight, he wasn't looking for answers. But something inside him refused to ignore what he'd just seen. When he unlocked the tablet using the passcode she herself had once asked him to remember, he discovered conversations that shattered every assumption he'd built over the past 2 years. There were messages discussing money, large sums, references to contracts, mentions of Phase 1. Then one sentence froze him completely. "Once the marriage certificate is signed, there's no reason to keep pretending." Ethan reread those words again and again. Pretending what? The conversation disappeared moments later, deleted remotely. Someone knew he'd seen too much. That night, Amara returned home cheerful as ever, carrying takeout from his favorite restaurant and apologizing for being unavailable all afternoon. She kissed him, asked about his day, laughed naturally. If Ethan hadn't seen those messages himself, he would have believed every word she said. Instead, he smiled and said nothing. From that moment forward, he stopped asking questions. He started collecting answers. Over the following weeks, Ethan quietly hired a private investigator without telling anyone, not even his closest friends. He didn't want assumptions. He wanted proof. Every report that arrived made his heart heavier. Amara wasn't meeting charity organizers. She was meeting attorneys, financial consultants, private investors, and one man she introduced everywhere as her cousin wasn't related to her at all. His name was Marcus. According to official records, he had changed his surname years earlier. The investigator uncovered something even stranger. Marcus had appeared in photographs connected to two previous wealthy businessmen whose engagements had ended under mysterious circumstances after substantial financial disputes. No criminal charges had ever been filed, nothing could be proven, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. Ethan felt physically sick. He wanted the reports to be wrong. He wanted someone to tell him there had been a misunderstanding. Instead, each new piece of evidence fit perfectly into a puzzle he never wanted to solve. Yet despite everything, he continued planning the wedding. He smiled through engagement parties, attended dress fittings, met with florists, tasted wedding cakes, posed for photographs. His family assumed he was simply overwhelmed by wedding preparations. Amara believed her performance was flawless. Neither realized Ethan had quietly begun preparing something far more important than a wedding: the truth. He copied documents, saved recordings, secured financial records, verified every detail through independent sources. If he confronted Amara privately, she could deny everything. If he canceled the wedding beforehand, everyone would believe he had panicked. No, if the truth was ever going to matter. Everyone needed to see it together. The reception continued beautifully.
I don't know!
We need to get out of here right now.
Speaking quietly with Amara's parents, all three looked unusually relaxed, almost relieved, as though something important had finally been completed. Marcus lifted a champagne glass toward Ethan from across the room. A subtle smile crossed his face. It wasn't friendly. It was confident. The smile of someone convinced the game was already over. Ethan returned the gesture with a calm nod. Inside, his pulse raced. He slipped his hand into his jacket pocket and felt the small flash drive resting there. Months of evidence, every document, every recording, every hidden transaction, enough to change everything. Across the ballroom, the master of ceremonies stepped toward the microphone with an excited grin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before we begin the cake-cutting ceremony, our groom has prepared a few special words for his beautiful bride." Applause filled the room. Guests turned toward Ethan with warm smiles. Amara reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. "I can't wait to hear this," she whispered. Ethan looked into her eyes. For a brief moment, he remembered the woman he thought he had fallen in love with, or perhaps the woman she had convinced him existed. He smiled sadly, then walked toward the microphone. The ballroom fell silent. Ethan adjusted the microphone with steady hands. The silence that settled over the ballroom felt almost sacred. Hundreds of eyes followed him, waiting for the heartfelt speech every groom was expected to give. The photographers moved closer, eager to capture another emotional moment for the wedding album. The string quartet quietly lowered their instruments. For several long seconds, Ethan simply looked around the room, at his parents. At Amara's parents, at friends who had traveled across the country to celebrate, at coworkers who believed they were witnessing the happiest day of his life. Finally, he smiled. "I want to thank every single person here for being part of today." The audience responded with warm applause. "It means more than you know that you've chosen to celebrate this day with us. Some of you have known me since I was a child. Others have only recently become part of my life. But every face I see reminds me how important honesty, trust, and family really are." Several guests nodded in agreement. Amara smiled proudly as she watched him. "So before we cut the cake, I'd like to tell you a short story." Room became even quieter. "My father taught me something when I was 10 years old. He told me that character isn't revealed when life is easy. Character reveals itself when someone believes nobody is watching." Ethan glanced toward his father. The older man smiled, unaware of where the speech was heading. "Carried those words with me my entire life." He paused, "and over the last few months, they've become more important than ever." Few guests exchanged curious glances. Amara's smile weakened slightly. Ethan continued calmly. "When I proposed to Amara, I believed I had found the woman I wanted beside me for the rest of my life. She was kind, intelligent, compassionate. She inspired everyone around her." He turned toward her. "And if that's the woman standing here today," he hesitated, "then this speech would have ended right there." Room fell completely silent. Amara blinked. Confusion slowly replaced her confident smile. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, still smiling for the cameras. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and removed the small flash drive. Only a handful of people noticed. "Always believed accusations without evidence destroy lives." His voice remained calm. "So I made myself a promise. If I ever questioned someone's character, I would only speak after I knew the truth." Wedding planner frowned. The photographers lowered their cameras. Guests shifted uneasily in their seats. Amara laughed nervously. "Ethan, you don't have to make the speech dramatic." Several people chuckled politely. Ethan looked at her with genuine sadness. "I wish it were only drama." Laughter stopped instantly. He turned toward the audiovisual technician standing near the projector. "A few weeks ago, I asked you to prepare a short video for today's reception." Technician smiled. "Yes, sir. When I give you the signal, please play the file named Truth." The technician looked confused but nodded. Amara's expression changed. "Video." Ethan met her eyes. "Recognize it." Face lost color. Marcus, standing across the ballroom, suddenly took a step forward. "Ethan," he called with an uneasy laugh, "maybe save whatever surprise this is until after dinner." Dozens of guests turned toward him. Ethan smiled politely. No, Marcus's smile disappeared. "I think everyone deserves to see it now." Amara reached for Ethan's arm. Her fingers trembled. "Can we talk privately?" He gently moved his arm away. "We've had months to talk privately. You chose silence. So today, the truth gets a voice." Ballroom had become so quiet that guests could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. Even the children had stopped playing. Nobody understood what was happening. But everyone knew something extraordinary was about to unfold. Amara forced another smile. "Whatever misunderstanding this is, can fix it." "I hope you're right," Ethan replied. "I really do." He nodded toward the technician. The ballroom lights dimmed. The giant projection screen behind the dance floor illuminated. At first, nothing appeared except a black screen, then white letters slowly faded into view. "Everything shown here has been verified through official records, financial documents, surveillance footage, and authenticated communications." Guests leaned forward. The first image appeared, a photograph of Amara entering an expensive downtown office building. Another image followed, then another, each carried a date and timestamp. Ethan narrated quietly. "These are the charity meetings I believed Amara attended." Screen changed. They weren't charity meetings. Official building directories appeared, law firms. Investment companies, private financial advisors. Murmurs spread across the ballroom. Amara shook her head immediately. Planning isn't a crime. No, Ethan agreed, it isn't. The screen changed again. Bank transfer records appeared, large amounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through companies unfamiliar to anyone in the room. Then photographs, Marcus entering the same offices, meeting the same attorneys, signing documents alongside Amara. Someone gasped. Marcus immediately stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Ethan calmly raised a hand. Please, I'm not finished. The next recording began. It wasn't video, only audio. The ballroom filled with voices. Amara's voice, Marcus's voice, crystal clear. If everything goes according to plan, once the marriage certificate is finalized, his assets become much easier to negotiate. Room froze. Several guests looked at Amara in disbelief. Her breathing became rapid. That's edited, she blurted out. It isn't, Ethan replied quietly. The forensic audio report is included in the evidence package already delivered to 3 different law firms. Marcus's confident expression finally cracked. Another recording played. Marcus laughed. He trusts you completely, Amara answered. That's why this is going to work. A woman near the front covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Amara looked desperately toward her parents. Her mother had gone completely pale. Her father stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Ethan continued. I spent weeks hoping these recordings were fake. I hired independent experts. They verified every file. I wanted to be wrong. I prayed I was wrong. His voice broke for the first time. But truth doesn't change because we don't like it. No one moved. No one spoke. The ballroom felt frozen in time. The screen displayed another document, a draft postnuptial agreement. Highlighted sections identified Ethan's business holdings, insurance policies, investment accounts, property ownership, everything neatly organized. As if someone had already planned dividing his life before the marriage had even begun. Guests stared at the screen in horror. The wedding photographer quietly lowered his camera. He couldn't bring himself to continue taking pictures. Amara suddenly walked toward the projector. Turn it off, she shouted. The technician looked at Ethan. Ethan simply shook his head. The presentation continued. Another image appeared this time. It wasn't financial, it was personal. Marcus embracing Amara outside a hotel nearly 6 months earlier. Not like cousins, not like business partners. Like 2 people hiding a relationship they never wanted discovered. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, shocked voices filled every corner of the room. Amara burst into tears. That's not what it looks like. Marcus stepped toward Ethan. Gone too far before he could take another step. 2 men in dark suits quietly entered through the ballroom doors. Neither wore wedding attire. Both carried identification wallets clipped to their belts. One calmly addressed Marcus. Sir, we're going to need a word with you. Every conversation stopped again. Marcus slowly turned. For the first time all evening, he looked afraid. Marcus took one step backward as the 2 investigators approached him. The confidence that had carried him through the evening vanished almost instantly. One of the investigators held up an identification badge. Mr. Marcus Reed. Marcus swallowed. We've been attempting to speak with you regarding an ongoing financial fraud investigation. Ballroom erupted into whispers. Marcus looked toward Amara, silently hoping she would say something, anything, to stop what was happening. She couldn't. Her composure had completely collapsed. Ethan remained standing at the microphone. I never wanted today to end like this. His voice was calm, but the hurt behind it was impossible to hide. I wanted to marry the woman I fell in love with. He looked directly at Amara. But somewhere along the way, I realized I had fallen in love with someone who never truly existed. Tears rolled down Amara's face. For the first time all evening, she stopped trying to defend herself. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't think it would go this far. Ethan nodded sadly. Neither did I. The room remained silent. No music, no laughter, only the sound of people realizing they had witnessed the collapse of something that had looked perfect only minutes earlier. Amara slowly removed her wedding ring. She looked at it for several seconds before placing it gently on the table beside the untouched wedding cake. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quietly. I made choices I can't undo. Her parents lowered their heads. Some guests quietly walked outside, unable to process everything they had witnessed. Others simply remained seated in stunned silence. Ethan picked up the microphone one final time. Learn something through all of this. Most dangerous lies aren't the ones strangers tell. They're the ones we choose to believe because they make us feel safe. He paused. If you've ever ignored your instincts because you were afraid of what the truth might be, don't. The truth may hurt. Deception always costs more. He looked around the ballroom one last time. I don't hate anyone standing here tonight. Hate would only allow this moment to control the rest of my life. So instead, I choose to walk away. He stepped down from the stage without anger, without shouting, without revenge, only peace. As he reached the ballroom doors, his father caught up with him and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. Ethan smiled faintly. It doesn't feel like it. His father nodded. Right thing rarely does at first. Outside, the evening air was cool. The sounds of the city continued as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Ethan, everything had changed, not because his wedding had ended, but because his future no longer belonged to a lie. Sometimes losing the life you planned is the only way to find the life you deserve. If stories like this remind you that appearances can be deceiving and that every choice has consequences, subscribe to Hidden Motives. We share cinematic, fictional stories filled with shocking twists, emotional moments, and unforgettable endings. Months later, Ethan received a handwritten letter. There was no return address. Inside was a single sentence. Thank you for exposing the truth before it became your future. He folded the letter carefully, smiled for the first time in months, and continued walking forward, not toward the life he had imagined, but toward one built on honesty instead of illusion. Because in the end, a wedding is only one day, character lasts a lifetime. If you enjoyed this fictional story, don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Motives so you never miss our next mystery filled with unexpected twists. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you had discovered the truth moments before cutting the wedding cake, would you have exposed it publicly like Ethan, or would you have handled it in private? Let us know your answer in the comments below.